Hello and welcome to Every Day with an Angel. And this is the Wednesday live show. And I hope you've been enjoying some of these 2-minute videos that I've been doing, which is the Every Day with an Angel uh, little mini shorts, whatever you want to call it. I haven't found the right words yet to do it. And so with that, it's the first Wednesday of the month. And thank you for being here with us. And if you're watching later, thank you for being here during that time. And I'm Natasha Venter. I am a multi-life intuitive. I do a lot of help with my spiritual counseling and mediumship and, energy seeing and just, bringing the dimensions and the quantum physics down into the realities of life. And I love Susy here, who does a lot of the same work I do. She goes from those quantum physics into just those every day, and she's a great channeler. And she's my partner in these first couple months here for sure, until the new year, helping get this podcast started, doing this on the Wednesdays here. So Susy, welcome back again, and your information's in the description of this show. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, but you're at bluelighthealing.com, and that's your website, right?
Bluelighthealing.com is my website. I'm Susy Parker Goins, and I am a channel, and I feel that my strength is bringing source through in ways that makes it accessible to you. So if you've got a bone to pick with a spirit guide, or want to clear up stuff with an ancestor, or looking at past lives, I really dig on doing that. But am one who will ask questions. If there is some being coming forward, I'll talk to it. And any of the techniques I use in my sessions can be learned by you. And so, when I teach you to clear or to fill in or to protect, these are things you can do. I also have my own podcast called Blue Lightning Healing Meditations, and that's available through Spotify, on YouTube, also on my website. Lately, like since January, I've been doing light language, and that is another means by which source expresses itself through me. And that's vocalizing, but it can happen with hands, with body, with movement, with writing. And that's also something I'm happy to share with everybody. I'm excited to be here, and Natasha picks really boss topics so that it gives us a chance. It's not like we have scripts, but we certainly know that we can talk about it. So welcome everybody. I'm happy to have you here, and I'm looking forward to chatting with Natasha today.
Yes, because we're going to be talking about, um, you know, boundaries really get a bad name. We think that we have to have rigid ones. We feel like we have to have all this, but actually, it's a lot of self-care. It's a lot of putting us in that loving moment when we do have boundaries. And we were talking earlier about how COVID, you know, that we kind of come into this moment where in COVID that life we didn't realize how many boundaries we didn't have, or were too rigid, because we had to live with somebody else, and then we had to figure out a new way of communicating, and then we had to figure this out. Now that we're a couple years past it, in a way, perspectives, not going to go there in that conversation, but it's like, how do we negotiate coming out of this story? And I know a lot of us are tired, a lot of us are stretched, a lot of us are trying to rebuild ourselves and try to find out where to go in our life, and trying to figure out what source, our spirit coming into our more spiritual life. How do we have these boundaries when we don't even have friends? Many of us are figuring out that our friends didn't fit. They fit our old life, but if they're staying in judgment, they're staying in all this, that we're moving into these new friendship groups. We hope. We haven't really found them yet, some of us, but it's that stretch and pull of the boundaries. And so, Susie, what do you get out of this?
With boundaries, I think it's a mixed barrel. There are some folks who have no boundaries at all, and that's part of the where I grew up. It's like you had to say yes, you had to be nice, you have to put up with stuff, or you didn't talk about it, or you just kind of did this. And so there were essentially no boundaries there. But then when for me, like when lockdown happened, I was separated from these people who were in essence stepping over boundaries. And the people who irritated me the most had to stay away. And actually, there was that moment of, oh, that that's really nice that I don't have to deal with these people. And so that's this great big a spectrum or a pendulum swing of, oh my God, I gotta have all these boundaries too. I had no boundaries. And so I'm at that point where I'm learning to have boundaries that are good for me. So if and I'm when I'm discerning somebody's energy and I think, no, I don't no, I no, no, I don't think that person, jives with me, and so that's when I can set up a boundary. Now I
Mhm.
have found that the people who object most to the boundaries are the ones who've stepped over the boundaries, and so now they're being told, "Yeah, you can't do that anymore,"
Mhm.
and it goes both ways with me, I've had some people say, "No, you can't do that," and I'm like, "Oh, gee, okay." So emotional intelligence would ask that I go, "I'm sorry for that. I apologize, and I will shift my behavior." And then as, Natasha was talking about, a narcissist would say, There are no boundaries. What do you mean?" And try and learning to navigate, not trying, but learning to navigate between those. What's a healthy boundary? It doesn't have to come at you like a train, but you do need to take care of it. And remembering that you are putting the boundary in place to take care of yourself,
Mhm.
that's that's the big step.
Yes, because I always pictured, especially with, a relationship, with, a spouse or a friend that, 2 strong people, those 2 strong people will make a good support for a roof. If you think about the Greek, pillars that come up, and then you have that little area that's over the roof, right? That you have these strong pillars and that's the way that I kind of imaged myself was it that I wasn't rigid, but I wanted to have individuality so we can have a good home. That I needed to be a strong person in the sense of loving myself enough to say, this doesn't work for me, and I didn't have to be mean about it, but I had to be firm about it.
Yeah.
And, and that's the thing. And I'm going to be honest with you. I live with a recovering narcissist. He started drinking when he was 12. He's a double Leo. Leos can tend to be a little bit narcissistically aligned with themselves in a loving way. We are all narcissists in some fashion. I'm an only child, so I can honestly claim that one a little bit, right? But yet, it's all in discernment of how do we use it and where does it sit with us. But then you got these people that are really like, you know, that it's their way or the highway. And like I would tell my husband all the time, you tell me to pick left, and then when I do pick left, you said I picked the wrong one, and now you're telling me I needed to pick right. So it's like always trying to get my foot, my boundary, my me off center, right? And that's what people who are narcissists tend to do is get us off centered, so we don't get our footing. But we have to find a way to get it. And, that's where I learned that a lot of times, let's say dealing with a narcissist, that I had to have something going off in my head. You know, I'm free from you treating me this way. I'm free from you treating me this way. I'm free from, so I didn't get off center. Right. But boundaries, self care, it's like we have to have them. Otherwise, we lose ourselves. And that's wrong. We got to find ourselves. That's the whole spiritual journey is finding ourselves. Right.
And sometimes understanding that this is about us is that first, it can seem like a huge step, like stepping across a chasm from what you've known
Mhm.
to breaking these old thought patterns, changing these old thought patterns, because being selfish, that's, there's so many generations behind us where they said, no, you have to give till it hurts, and all sorts of other outdated paradigms, to be honest. And then, I'm part of the boomer generation, but I'm not a boomer in that I don't think that everybody's lazy or that something is wrong with the young people today. I'm not that get out of my yard kind of person. Okay. I'm
Me
just saying
neither.
that now. Not that way. But understanding, I think that's been an amazing journey, is understanding um, when I had to take care of myself, because I'm a 10-year cancer survivor. And that, boy, howdy, if that is not a lesson in self care, I don't know
Yes.
what is. And I honestly don't wish it on anyone. But I have had to learn that there are things I can do and things where I can do to a point, and it's being okay with it. I do have clients who are still working on um, issues surrounding self love, and I support them all the way because I know that it can be quite the journey, and that you are working and breaking down those old patterns.
Mhm.
Those old patterns of, listening to what your parents said, because, as a kid, you thought they knew it all. They were the end all and be all, and when in fact they're
Just as
human. Oh,
human.
Gaspard.
I know. They were very human. Yes, and
Yeah.
that's the thing is that, even if we didn't wanna listen to them, they still were an influence because
Mhm.
it was almost a I don't wanna call it a form of brainwashing, but, in a way, when you listen to something day in and day out, it is a form of brainwashing, and we get to believe it, and so we get into these patterns, and many of us were taught to be caregivers, that we had to take care of the family, we had to take care of this, we had to take care of that, we had to be perfectionists, we had to be all these things. And that doesn't give us strong boundaries
Mhm.
because we're always there for others, right? So how, you know, uh, you mentioned that you're a 10-year survivor, 10-year cancer survivor, and that's tremendous. And going into the story of being a caregiver, you know, you were a mom at the time of some young ones. Not real young, but you know, they were in those turning of their life, that 10, 11, 12 year olds, right? About that time.
Um, Actually, they were approximately the same age range that my 2 of my sisters and I were when my mom had cancer. So,
Mhm.
13 and 9, and let's see, 13, 9, and then 16, somewhere
Mhm.
around there, 14, 15. So, yeah.
So very turning points in their lives.
And the event itself is trauma inducing anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, it really is, and, then you have a husband who's negotiating that, and, you know
Mhm.
you know, were you, though, before this started, more of a caregiver?
Well, yeah, I was the stay-at-home mom and driving them to school, packing up lunches. We were at an alternative education center, so I was supposed to be the primary instructor, but I guided them and I was doing the mom thing.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
And
but
then
yeah.
you have this life-altering experience come up to you, and it really, sets the pattern of the whole family off, and from what it was, which actually,
Mhm,
in some ways, I have always found that these life-altering experiences were actually the blessing in disguise to stir my pot to get things to land in the better place for themselves,
mhm,
you know?
you know, yeah, and as far as boundaries were, there were some people who, were willing to help and other people who were not. And so that's another paradigm in boundaries. One woman stopped by hoping it felt like she was hoping to get some sort of absolution from being poorly behaved. And I'm like, I don't have the energy to talk to you. I just don't. So that was one of those. I'm taking care of myself now. And, you know, those people who thought I was ready to go for what did somebody call it? The dirt nap. I was like, just no, I don't have time for you now. I have other things to focus on like myself. So
Mhm.
it was fascinating to see what sort of boundaries presented themselves and what ones I was very okay with.
Mhm. So let's stretch that out a little bit. Because I have found that the universe that I believe in, that it's interesting how boundaries get started to be presented. They
Mhm.
start saying, "You need to have this boundary." And then we kinda go, "Huh? Really?" I mean, not necessarily in that way. I mean, some of us kinda go, "I don't see it, I don't see it, I don't see it." And then others go, "Wow, this is in my face. Why are they yelling at me? Why are they doing this to me? Why are they doing that to me?" And you have to look at this boundary that's showing up. So, how do we recognize when a boundary needs to be shown is starting to show up? How can we as humans see that story of why do we need to have a boundary? Or what is the boundary that is coming that says, ah, good time to have me?
I would say listen to how your body feels. Because
Mhm.
if you, applied kinesiology or muscle testing, they call it, and that's listening to what your body says. Um, when you are in a situation and you feel something, for me, I feel it sometimes just like in the solar plexus or even in the throat when I'm just kind of feeling like, oh, I
I
can't
gotta
give about
blurt. I
this.
gotta blurt.
Yeah, it's like, maybe not. And so I encourage folks to do that, do a body scan, figure out what feels right, what feels wrong. And again, ask your body the question, why is my eye twitching like this so much? Is there because I don't agree with something,
Arr.
or why is my stomach upset?
Mhm,
And listen to it. Listen to what your body's saying. Believe. I think that's the first step though, is to believe that your body is talking to you and believe what it is saying, and then you act on it. That's I think an easy, very portable way to decide to determine if what's going on, just what is going on. And sure, if that's a boundary, then by golly, pay attention to it and set it. And guilt is not really necessary. Guilt is somebody else putting their, I don't want to say values, their opinions on you. And
mhm.
it's not worth it because that's just another time for your body to go, no.
Exactly. I know
Just-
for me that when I started getting those feelings, it was like I was just done. I was really done with that action, and I really, started observing how passive aggressive I was,
Mhm.
and some of those things that were starting to, negotiate, in me about having boundaries, that I would start I don't wanna say be argumentative, but I was kinda like, you know, uh, "Why are you talking to me this way?" These and that's the thing is the brain will start talking for you. You
Yeah.
know, it will start saying, "Why are you talking to me this way? Why am I put in this situation? Why does this keep happening to me? Why?" You start hearing these things, and you start talking to yourself about some of this stuff, and that's when you know that there's some boundaries too. Is that when you start having your brain saying, "Why does this keep happening? Why do I keep getting hit with this responsibility? Why do I keep hearing this story? Why do I keep getting sabotaged all the time, you know?
Mhm.
Well, look at what your life keeps repeating to help you move forward. And, you know, eh, there's things that we can do to negotiate it. So how do you start having a boundary? What is some of the language that you can start using when you want to start having a boundary?
I first off, I do the first thing is I question it. It's like I take the time. That's the first thing for me
Mhm.
is to honestly, it doesn't always work.
I know,
This
we
is
are
one of
human, right?
those ideal worlds with extra garlic for me that I can take the time to go, hang on a second. Let me let me think about this. Let me go and look at it because a lot of times people will push you and push you and push you until you get a response. And that's one thing I've had to learn in my marriage is that my husband takes the time to think out his response and I'm like, I'm fifth out of six. So you had to be fast. You had to jump and you had to have a response. I didn't always have a good response, but there were times it was like I had a response, but my husband takes more time to process it. So being aware of that situation and then understanding that you can say no. You can say, I need to take a break here. Give me a minute. I'm going to go away. You don't need a response right now. I can't give you a response right now. And say this boundary pusher is saying, oh, yeah, you can. It's like, no, that's
No.
okay. We're going to close this out now and I'll get back to you.
Mhm.
That's the first step is to allow yourself that space.
Exactly, we have to think things out, and that's one thing that I have started saying is, I love us enough to say, "I need to stop." I love us enough to say, "I stop," and I I like to be kind with my way, I'm not necessarily and so sometimes I'm too nice, and that's probably why took so long to have boundaries because I am nice, and so with that but it takes that moment to say, "I need time, I need the experience, I need the time to process what's really happening here." And I know for me that I would start things off because of me needing to get that motivation that like for me, my husband was always putting me as his garbage can, like he says to me a couple times, babe, I'm sorry. You hurt the ones you love. It's like, and I don't mean to do this, and I'm trying to do better, and I sat in one of his meetings that he was having, and he actually said this, to the group, well, you always kind of hurt the ones you love, don't you? And it's like, and I'm trying to do better. And I gave him credit for that because he is trying to do better. But there was that part of me that would say, I'm done being your garbage can. I'm
Mhm.
done being your garbage can.
Yeah.
And I at one time, as he was walking out of the bedroom, I metaphorically kicked over the garbage can so he had nothing to dump it in. It's like, because it was such a rotten moment in my life and how do you negotiate that? But you have to be selfish sometimes in a positive way to create these boundaries. And it's not about being mean, but it's that tough love. And that's the thing that people could get into this story about how things are mean. And this is the language I use. I'm using tough love. I'm using that tough love of that you deserve better and I deserve better. And with that, we gotta agree to be disagreeing. And because I know that I've even come up with the mantra, I'm not doing anything wrong, but there's something I can change. So with that some of us have a hard time admitting that something needs to change. Well, I'm not doing anything wrong, but there's something I can change.
Mhm.
And to give an example is that my husband, after working 10 to 12-hour days some days, he wants dinner done when he gets home. Well, he's forgetting that I have a full-time job sometimes with doing my business and then working outside for a couple hours. And sometimes dinner doesn't get done. Well, I know this is a trigger of his, right? So I'm not doing anything wrong because it's not wrong that I cook dinner at 7 o'clock. But there's something I can change because this is a trigger so I can have a conversation with him. Honey, Tuesday's my late night. What do we want to do about dinner? You know? So there's creating boundaries. That's
Mhm.
a form of boundary, saying that I don't want to be treated negatively anymore. I'm not doing anything wrong by my actions because I'm doing it out of love, but there's something I can change. So communication is 90% of it. And
Yeah,
that's the thing is
self-awareness.
we gotta have communication and we gotta be vulnerable enough to have communication.
Mhm. Yeah, and that takes a level of self-awareness that I think that, um, it can be scary. I've
Mhm.
had clients I've worked with one years ago, and she said, "I can't come back to you." And I said, "Why?" You and she's like, "Because I'm afraid of what you're going to find and how you're going to feel about it." So there is that
Mm.
vulnerability there that is required when you are looking at self-care and boundaries and also developing that self-awareness. So being able to say, "I know this is going to be a thing and let's not have it be a thing." So you're right, communication is vastly important, not only with someone else about a boundary, but with yourself.
Yeah.
Working with folks, working with yourself, working on yourself. I've recently gone through and figured out one of my blockages. And, it all went all the way back to like, I don't know, sixth grade. So I'm like, okay, I got to talk to her from sixth grade and we're going to sort this out so that we can move forward in other projects and other things. But being self-aware and not beating yourself up over it.
I know
It's
we've been
not.
taught. Yeah, we've been taught to beat ourselves up. We've been
Mhm,
taught to be mean to ourselves, and we have to be our best friend. What would our best friend tell us? You know, especially dealing with a narcissist. What would our best friend tell us? And I understand how manipulative life can be when you are having low self-esteem and then you have someone that was chosen, you chose, both chose, whatever the circumstances. We're here now. What are we going to do about it? It's not how things start. It's what we got to deal with while we're here, right? And so with that, coming into that perception of, holy crap, this is actually what I put myself into, you know? I'm here with it. I'm here in an abusive relationship. I'm in here with an abusive boss, or I'm in a situation where, I've gotten to where I am not communicating well. I haven't communicated well. I put myself into a rabbit hole and I don't know how to get out of it. Or, I have this situation with a friend. I've been friends for years and years and years. And now I'm finding that we're actually not as close as we thought we were. You know, so we're coming up to these crossroads in our lives about making decisions. And, it's that stepping out. Like I've said to some people, it's like, well, when you're starting to separate in a relationship, we can still be friendly, but we don't have to be necessarily friends. So how can you be
mhm.
communicative being friendly so that you don't necessarily burn the bridge, but you burn the quick notes to each other. You're not so available for each other, and by saying, hey, maybe 3 out of, yeah, and maybe out of 5 times you're busy, so you only go out 2 times with them, right? So it's that stretch and pull. Do you have any ideas about this at all?
Navigating through, well, I think being self-aware and understanding where you're at there and catching it before it turns into a great big volcanic explosion.
Mhm.
I've experienced that in a couple of relationships, and it was like out of the blue. And so it's easy for someone to um, to want to pull the plug immediately without the communication, and that was kind of alarming. But then once that happened, it was actually for the best. And you're talking about as we're passing each other on the street side, I'm civil.
Mhm.
I don't have to ask about their pets. I don't have to do all that. But that's part of my boundary is to not get caught up. I actually spent time in some metaphysical therapy, if you will, exploring a relationship that kind of went south. And I either was clueless about it or I certainly looked to see where my part was in this. And I realized I'm not the only one who was in this friendship, in this group. And so taking the time to examine it, not taking too much time because it's easy to overthink,
Mhm.
you know, hold on, let me overthink this. I've got the t-shirt. I'm part of that club. But
I know,
being,
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
I am
it
thinking about this constantly.
yeah, don't stop me. Okay, but looking at it from, um yeah, not sometimes an analytical point of view where you can say this happened, and look at that chain of events, seeing, okay, that's what they're but looking at your part in it, looking at their part in it, and looking at it with, I don't wanna say, yeah, with kind of an analytical eye, because it's emotion can get caught up in there. And because I want to get there before it blows up, I want to get there before I throw a tantrum. That allows me that space to go, okay, this is what I'm seeing. Let me figure out if that's what other people are seeing. And then we can establish that boundary. And it was a case where somebody just kind of climbed over the boundary like it was a siege, and I was just like, "No, that's not gonna work for me," and I ignored it at first because I'm learning about boundaries even now.
Exactly, 'cause it doesn't I don't care how spiritual you are, we're all human. We're all human and we gotta figure it out, and, we really don't know how well we're doing about it until that situation comes up again, right? We think we may got it, but we have to negotiate it. So, we got a couple people watching. If you have anything that you would like to comment about, please, please put in a comment. We do want to get a perspective of this and how is this sounding to you and how are you liking what we're talking about? Because it is a thing. I know for me, like I had situation that came up just in this last year and you know, I really had to take a moment and take the person out of the situation. Like okay, that example was is that, I had a situation where somebody said I was doing something that I wasn't doing. You know,
Okay.
Like, I was late all the time to my situation or to what my responsibilities were, and that I was not doing a good job at what I was doing. Totally was not what was happening. So what I had to do was instead of saying, "Well, she told me this," I said, "This was told to me. How do I feel about what this was told to me?" Right? I didn't like it. And it
Mhm.
was calling me something that I wasn't. It was pushing on my integrity. Okay, so pushing on my integrity. Okay, so how do I feel about that integrity? Okay. So then I knew when I was going back that I knew that I needed to have a conversation with that person. So then I can have a conversation about feeling valued and their perception. That was what I got out of it. Was I had to negotiate what the perception was and what that the negotiation was. And the reason why I knew I needed to go back to that person was because that person is what said it, right? So I figured out what the problem was that I was negotiating without the person in it. So then my emotions weren't attached to the person. My
Mhm.
emotions were attached to how I was feeling about it. So then I can negotiate that. And then I went back and knew how better to communicate with the person because I had my ducks in a row about what my intention
Mhm.
was with that conversation. And so I lost the triggers in that conversation. It was actually better, and then I was smart and I had somebody who witnessed the conversation because it was somebody who I was my supervisor. So, knew I needed to not have that conversation by myself, but with a friend, you gotta have to have sometimes a conversation by yourself, and you're gonna have to do these negotiations, and so, going forward, the most important thing is to realize that we're all human, and we're all in a moment of learning, and how can we help each other learn?
Yeah, I think we're talking friend situations and work situations, and we've glanced on relationship situations, and it can all be handled mostly the same way. It's that self-awareness and
Mhm.
being able to communicate and taking out the anger behind it. I and understanding you don't have to deal with it right now. 'Cause it's that pressure, that like, I really need to say this, and then that's when I get flustered when I get angry, and then I start to cry, and then I start to feel like, "Oh my god, I'm so useless because I can't speak normal." And it just that's where overthinking really does come in handy because I can sit there and run the scenario in my head at any given time and say, "Okay," and 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 I can have an idea of the points I want to cover. Now, like you were saying, Natasha, you're looking at your emotions to it. I'm not trying to control or dictate how somebody else is going to respond. "Oh, I say this, and then, oh, they say that, and then I come back with a crack my knuckles and bring it all up. I can't have that ability. That's really not my place to figure out how they're going to
To
respond. I
respond.
just know this is these are the points I want to cover. And
Mhm.
and I rehearse it. I've got a theater background. I know about rehearsing. I got to go through it. So I make sure I can catch the points I want to and to just write it down. That's not a sign of weakness. It's not a
No.
sign of anything bad. It means you have things you want to cover.
Mhm.
And because there's nothing like that, "Ha, I finished my point," and you walk away, and then 2 minutes later, you're like, "Oh, I forgot. Oh, man.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
gee." So go ahead and make the notes and remind yourself, this is what it's about for you.
Mhm.
And then say your piece and then listen.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be perspectives from the other person. I know it's happened to me where there are perspectives that have been presented by the other person. I went, "Oh, wow. Okay, I hadn't thought of that," because it's not my perspective.
Mhm.
But being calm and listening, I think that, they say what, 2 ears, 1 mouth, listen more than you talk. And so just say your piece
Mhm.
and then listen for them and develop that conversation, um, that foundation for communication. And it's like not about trying to one up somebody else. I think that's some basic communication thing is you listen. You're not sitting there thinking about a blazing put down. You have some sort of comeback. It's not about that. It's about staying present in the moment. I think that's a thread through these conversations is that being present in the moment so that you can hear them, you can
Mhm.
listen to them, and they can listen to you.
Yes, and that's one thing that I have learned is to listen, and like I said that, I'm married to a recovering narcissist, that he's a very kind man and he's learned a lot. He's just celebrated 11 years sober, so he's done
Oh,
a
well
lot of
done.
he's done a lot of internal work, mental work, emotional work, and I'm just so proud of him. But that's the thing is that there's still times when, he's a Leo, and he likes to roar sometimes, and he's learning how to be calmer with that. And but there's sometimes where, I have to listen. I have to listen. And then this is what I do a lot of times. Okay, universe. If you want me to have a conversation that brings in perspective and that I need to and I have a want to say certain things, can you please make it available? Can you make this conversation time available and have them ready to listen to my perspective? You know, and I set it up and I ask that energy to set it up. And I ask my team and my energies to set up. I need to have a conversation. So please make it set up so that they're willing to listen. And then I have to check my intention. I really have to check my intention. Is my intention to call them wrong or is my intention to be felt and heard? Right. And so checking that intention is huge because, there's been times where, the right thing comes out of my mouth and it's short, sweet, and to the point with no fire behind it. And it hits the point and it gets heard.
Yeah. Calling on your guides to help you stay calm in the moment, but there are times when you do need to set that boundary with them. It's not that I don't trust the universe and I don't trust the person with me. It's that sometimes that's the point, is to say, I need to speak, and I
Mhm.
need to speak with you listening, and then I will listen to you. Sometimes those words need to be said because somebody may not be in a place and you get to help them shift into that space of listening, of being present in the moment.
Mhm.
Put down your phone. I got something to tell you.
Mhm.
Oh, what is it? Just listen, okay? It's
Yeah.
okay, and then we can talk. Or, we'll go out for walks at night. I think that's a good time for us to have conversations. Usually it's just like, what do you want for dinner tomorrow? Because I don't know. But there are other times you gotta have other conversations, and being in a place where um, what do we call it? Neutral territory, if you will.
Mhm.
You know, I have a family member who's much nicer when she's not in her own territory. She's in a neutral territory. It's like, okay, fine. But just to be in a place where you can have an outlet for
Mhm.
the physical energy in addition to whatever emotional is moving through the energy. And you can do it physically, and you can do it emotionally, and you can do it psychically. You can do all the things. But sometimes you
Exactly.
just have to say the words.
Exactly. There's been times my husband and I, there's sometimes I say, "Honey, this is gonna be more than 3 words, and, I would appreciate you giving me a chance to get this out."
Mhm.
And he says, "Okay," and then I can tell when his energy starts to wane, I say, "Honey, just give me a few more sentences.
Yep.
You gotta give it to me. I give it to you, you gotta give it to me." And so it's that, heads up because, men and women communicate totally different. And we have to understand that that's a discernment. How do we communicate to the one we love, the ones that we care about? How do we communicate to a boss? And that's the story is it's practice makes better. We're not going to do it right. There's no right. But one thing that I always concentrate on is like it's like a ship. How do you write the cargo? You know, you don't have all the information heavy on one side, so your ship is going off weird, right? You have to kind of get the information, your research, your knowing, your words, who are you talking to, kind of get it in there so that you can kind of have the righter way to negotiate this conversation. Like you say, take, notes down, get the process down. Sometimes, it's nice to free write before
Yep.
you have the conversation, so you have your angst out of the way, that victimhood out of the way, or that, the whatever that story was that got triggered in you. Many of us get triggered because our inner child
Mhm.
gets triggered, and then we kind of get into, but I didn't want to hear that. It's like we gotta negotiate so that we're our better self coming into these kinds of conversations with boundaries.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, inner children, boy howdy. I like the idea of doing some free write or automatic writing in which you have that conversation, and I think that will go a long way in helping to relieve some of the emotion behind it and allow it to peel away so that you can look and see the facts of it and say, "Okay, this is what it is. This is how it made me feel." So I think that's a really valuable tool,
Mhm.
is being able to sit there, I sit there and talk to myself. You can write stuff or record it into your phone, or I don't text very well. I'm pretty bad at it, but I like my voice recorder. So, but then I have to find it. But oh well. But being able to sort it out, and that's where giving yourself that time and space,
Mhm.
that distance from it at the time to process. That's what this is being able to process stuff. Just because you process it, though, doesn't mean it goes away. Doesn't mean you don't have to worry about talking about it. It means you've processed it to the point where you can address it. Now, on the other side of the coin, sometimes blowing up actually really does bring home the point that, yes, you mean this.
Mhm.
Those are for the folks who just refuse to take the hints.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
I know.
yeah.
Yeah, 'cause there
Yes.
are times where it's like, we've had to scream and yell about it, and but there again is checking in with the intention, checking in with the intention, because I know that
Mhm.
I've practiced that for many years, checking in with my intention so I can call upon it pretty quickly. And let it speak for me. I know that, like, I was having that conversation with my supervisor, and I asked my team, to help me stay on track. And so the word breathe, when I started getting too emotional,
Yeah.
I'd heard the word breathe and I knew ground myself. And that's
Good.
usually when I brought it back in the conversation. Okay, the reason why I called this meeting is because you said this. And this is the cause and effect of that statement.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
and so it's setting up those boundaries, and so finding those tools in yourself. You have to trust yourself when you're starting to negotiate
Yeah.
this road. You have to love yourself enough to come into this knowing of yourself. I mean, and I'm saying you have to because that's the only way to negotiate keeping boundaries. And that's the part we haven't talked about is that, do boundaries always stay firm? No, they don't.
Mm-mm.
They're a wobbly, weevily, perspective that some days things are a little bit more graceful than others, but there again, how do we negotiate that story is, sometimes we waver on a boundary and then we realize, oh, I didn't communicate very well
Yeah.
about that, did I? And I have to step
Yeah.
back a few minutes and say, sorry, babe, didn't do anything wrong, but there's something I can change, right? I did
Yeah.
not
You gotta
communicate
check
well
in
about
with
it. And
yourself.
yeah, go ahead.
You definitely have to check in with yourself. I it just sounds like constant vigilance. You don't really have to be constantly vigilant, but you go into a situation, you go, okay, how do I feel right now? What can I handle? And when my kids were smaller, I would tell them, okay, y'all, today I've got this much patience. And they're like, okay, okay. And they'd go banging pans or pots. And after a while, I'd go, okay, my patience is here. And for the kids, it gave them a visual, but I could also tell them that I'm checking in. And there were times I said, you know what? I need to take a step out. I need to just go. But that's what maintenance is. You don't always have to maintain the boundary because there are two sides to the boundary. You've got your side of it. And then the other person may be respecting the boundary to the point where it's actually taught them something to where they shift their perspective through
Mhm.
this experience, and so everybody gets to grow, and that I think is a win-win sort of thing, is when everybody gets to win, everybody lives for the day. And
I totally agree because I know for me changing the communication and setting up the boundaries that I have, my marriage has turned into a miracle. You know, I can say that I have the most loving man that I've ever had because the fact that he's set up his boundaries for me and I've set up my boundaries for him.
Mhm.
And we've done it with love and
Yeah.
kindness. We've done it with the intention to better ourselves. We've done it in the sense of after being married for 32 years, together for 34, that we've known that out of that time, I don't know how many times a year we've had to push the reset button in our marriage, which was setting up different boundaries, which was setting up different wants and desires, was setting up different things that happen. And it's not to say that we were perfect every time. How could we? We were doing different things at different emotions at different times, being grief at some points, being in, addiction at some points, being in non-addiction at some point. It's like whatever the story was, right? But how do you love yourself enough to push the reset button and say, okay, I can redo this again. I can retry this again. And I'm going to know that I'm going to be human during it. And we're going to be perfect and perfect because it's about practice to do better. Practice to
Mhm.
do better.
Yeah, and sticking up for yourself and putting yourself to the fore. This is what I'm doing. And, I think self love, yeah, it does take practice. But, sometimes you have to start small. It's a story I tell. When I was working on my body image, I thought, wow, I've got a great right ankle. Isn't that a great right ankle? It's got that bone that sticks out. It's nice and shapely. I would put henna on it and I would work my way up. And, it just takes time to develop it. But the more you practice at it, the better you get. Are you going to be indomitable and absolutely rigid in your self love? I don't know. That's your call.
Mhm.
And understanding that it's not for me or Natasha or that person in the street who looked at you weird. It's not up to them to determine your self worth, your self
Exactly.
love. You're doing that. And that has made such a difference for me is to believe in what I do. I'll be sitting there giving a reading and it's like, I don't know about this. But then I've got me in there going, trust what you're saying. It's going to be fine. It's going to go the way it needs to go.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay. So I believe myself. I believe in myself. And I think um, it's something we can all do. It's a
Exactly.
level of self love we can all achieve.
Mhm. Well, and I can say that I figured out that self-love after my parents passed away and I had new babies and my hormones were totally out of whack and I was in deep grief and depression and it was just a story and I started saying, "Hi, little toe. Yes, thank you for balancing me. I know that you're not really appreciated because you're just this little thing sitting out there, but yet at the same time though, if I didn't have you, I probably wouldn't be able to balance as
Mhm.
well as I do. Thank you, little toe. I do love you. Thank you. I'm noticing you. I'm witnessing you. And then I would go to the other toes. And then I would go to the
Yep.
ball of foot. And then I would go to the bones of the foot. And then it's like we have to start somewhere noticing
Yeah.
ourselves. We have to start somewhere to notice ourselves. And if you notice yourself, that's when you can start creating these boundaries. And when you notice yourself, you don't become so much of a caregiver. You're a giver of care. And that's the thing that I started changing my language. Changing my language. I'm no longer a caregiver. I'm a giver of care. And when I started doing that, then I stopped being the the wallflower or the pinball machine or the hey, I need you over here, or no, I need you, or they need me over there, and I can't say no. It's like no, not a caregiver. I'm a giver of care, which means that I have to step back and be a part of the story. What choices am I making? Who am I making these choices to? Boundaries are simple. And I don't mean simple in the sense of being able to say them, but simple in the sense of that it is sometimes a saying, I can't do that. You know? And
Yeah.
it's not simple to say that sometimes, but it's the action that it's in the big picture between, going to this gas station or going to that gas station, really in the big picture of life, it's not gonna make that big of a difference, right? But sometimes when you got somebody in the car telling you, "I want you to go this one. I want you to go that one," and it's like you're going in the middle going, "I'm making my own choice, and I'm gonna go to the 3rd one." That's a boundary. That's a boundary because
I think
I wanna do what I wanna do.
it's the choice of it. Where are you setting up the boundary? I think when we realize we actually have a choice,
Mhm.
that's that's a real game changer because some people want you there are some paradigms out there where no, this is what you have to do. And that's when I really dig in my heels and go, no, no, I don't have to do that. Nope, 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 nope.
Yep.
I'll do it when I'm ready, when I am damn good and ready. Um, and understanding it is your choice to set up that boundary, and you can choose to maintain it, and you can choose to release it, and somebody else has the choice of respecting it or not. I think it's the consequences that some folks don't want to deal with. It's like, well, then, if you don't like the way it turns out, you can make different choices. I'm maintaining this choice, I'm maintaining this boundary, And my choice is you can respect it or not. And if you don't, then I have a choice next after that. So you do have a choice in the matter. You
Exactly,
absolutely do.
exactly. And then, we only got a few minutes left in this show,
Mhm.
but how do we respect other people's boundaries? There's
By
sometimes where
listening,
it's yeah, by listening and
by
agreeing
listening to
that
what the boundary is.
and then being willing that it might hurt us emotionally in some way that we don't get our way, that we don't get what we want, because we're not the only one in the room.
Mhm.
That there's other people that are in the room, right? So how do we step back, and understand that other people's boundaries are just as important as ours, and they're
That
not
requires a
always
lot of
comfortable.
emotional intelligence.
Yeah, and it's not always gonna be comfortable to hear what other people have for boundaries. That's our own problem. That's our own thing that we have to work with, and then, receiving that's their perception, and that there's that want and their desire that is sometimes, if we really look at it, if we're willing to say, "Ouch," and, "Oh, okay." You know?
I I do that. I ask people, when I do sessions or when I see people in the street, I will ask them, not in the street. I don't hug everybody, but when I'm meeting people known online, it's like, is it okay if I hug you? And
Mhm,
most folks are saying, yeah, sure. One woman said, no, I want to maintain my energy. And I went, oh, okay, cool. It's nice to see you. So being able to allow them that choice, allow them that space to actually listen and take it to heart.
mhm,
That's another way to develop that trust is to believe what they're saying. I hear some folks just trying to say, what was it? I offered up something. I don't know. Here, I was tipping somebody, and they said, "Really?" And I said, "Look, I wouldn't offer it if I didn't mean it." So I believe in my choice. You can have that choice too to accept it. And it's again, it's about listening and knowing your intention behind it.
mhm. Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Susie, I am so grateful for you. So grateful for you.
Thank you.
You have taught me so much. You have guided me. You have loved me. And I hope you have felt the same from me because I just love
Absolutely.
our
Fully
exchange
supported.
and doing what we do. So you're going to be at a place this weekend.
Yeah, yeah, this weekend. Oops, what I don't know my schedule. Yeah, I'll be in Arlington at the Medallion Hotel from 11 to 4 at the Metaphysical Market. You can find the date and the location either on my website, bluelightninghealing.com, or you can go to Facebook and find the Metaphysical Market. I also have on my website other events that I will be at in the coming months. I've actually mostly caught up. You can find my podcast episodes there. Yeah, how to contact me, and yeah, it's the holiday season. I'm so excited for all of the events that I'm a part of. I'm really grateful, and thank you,
Mhm.
Natasha, for having me on today.
Oh, I'm so grateful. Yes, you will be on for another 2 months for sure. November
Two
and
months, yeah,
December, the first of the month, and then we'll reevaluate and see. Maybe you can come on once in a while and be a part of this
yeah.
little dance. Um, Thank you everyone for being here. I We do hope that this show is helpful. If you know somebody who would like to listen to this, please share it. Be supportive of this dance because this is a perspective that Susie and I have. Remembering your truth is your truth, and we only want to give you loving support in your dance of being human because we are all human trying to figure out how to get down the road of life because it is a journey, right? It is a journey. So thank you for being here, Susie. I am here live every Wednesday at 4 o'clock Pacific time. You can catch these videos later. They're on recording. I have many other recordings. I have now over 600 videos on my YouTube channel. And I know that some of them have been around for a long time, but they're just as relevant. So thank you for being here. And please look for Every Day with an Angel live Wednesdays. And then the mini short videos are on, I try to post every night for the journey of life to help those little short little messages. So blessings to you, and thank you again, Susie. You can catch me at
Mhm.
angelicclarifications.com, and you can catch podcasts at Every Day with an Angel if you like to listen to podcasts. And I'm gonna figure out how to go live there too. I'm not too sure, or do more little blurps there too. So blessings, everyone, and may love be with you, and may self love be with you. Blessings be. Bye now.